Okay, everybody. Well, welcome to Industry Exchange, the space where creatives, entrepreneurs, and industry insiders meet and share everything. I'm Megan Jones, your host, and I am here to help navigate these conversations, honest conversations, to help you level up your craft and your business. So let's dive in. And of course, we are here today with Becky Mickletz, founder of Remix Marketing. And so Remix Marketing is a creative marketing agency, right? Communications agency. You guys deal a lot with brands and creatives and also sort of dabble in the mental health space. So if you wouldn't mind sharing, just a little bit about your journey and where you are.
Yeah, thanks for the intro. The short of my 9 lives, yeah, with Remix, it's really brand specialty, design related strategy, which really is psychological, which kind of naturally ties into the mental health space already of how we interact with the world, both digitally and in real life, and how design makes us feel. And like as we know, and I'm sure we'll get into it more, that's such an important part of being a creative is connecting with people. But for me, getting into mental health more as the company kind of led in that direction actually happened in 2019, aka right before the pandemic, oddly enough.
Yeah.
I always joke that I'm a yapper when it comes to mental health stuff. I'm never afraid of any type of conversation. And so just wrote on LinkedIn about my struggles as a solo female business owner, like what they don't really tell you and warn you about. And I just kind of blabbed about it there. And General Assembly and WeWork picked it up and basically were like, can you come teach this? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, teach this? Because I'm like, my other, thing, and I even think as we were leading up to this conversation, I'm like, I ain't a life coach. We don't need more of those. We have plenty of them. They have a specialty for a reason. I'm not a licensed therapist. I'm always very careful with how I word things, but I do give a shit. And I also, have the experience of public speaking and everything. And so when they approached me about it, I kind of was like, okay, I like this idea of talking about it. Cause I asked them straight up, I was like, why? And like, what do you mean you want me to teach it? They're like, these conversations are important. And I was like, hell yeah, they are. At that same time, I was putting together a workshop then for General Assembly. And I was terrified to do it alone because, again, I'm like having major imposter syndrome, which we'll also get into a lot in this conversation, I'm sure. Wanted to make sure with it being such a delicate space, I was doing it right. So I had like a sleep specialist who actually was a lawyer by trait, but noticed, hey, lawyers aren't sleeping. I should study this. So similar paths. I had a yoga instructor who specialized in breathing techniques. I spoke on the digital space and social media, and it's one more person that I'm blanking on off the top of my head. But anyway, all that to say, I was like coming in with a team where I'm like, I want to make sure we're giving people as much information in specialties, and coming from those ways of life. At that first event that I did, I met a good buddy Spencer, who is running a music nonprofit here in Denver, and was like, you should look into mental health first aid, which I was like, I don't even know what that is. I'd never heard of it. And essentially, it is just like first aid, but hey, it's for your brain. And that kind of was the launching point for me of how I was seeing a need for it in this space, the conversations, the safe space, the accessibility. All of my workshops, when possible, are free or donation based. All the resources I give are free or donation based. And that really was the start of it. And again, that was in 2019. So that was right before the pandemic hit. And then I was doing digital workshops all throughout 2020, honestly. Like it was probably 50% of my business. And that was not the plan.
Yeah.
So it's kind of crazy timing wise. I say it with like a little bit of luck thrown into it, but like timing is everything kind of thing. And now since 2020, it's really evolved and always trying to do different initiatives with it and, cater to as many people without burning myself out. But that's the short of the 9 lives of kind of how I got to it now.
Yeah. That's wild. And yeah, you kind of everything sort of hit right at the right time because yeah, that was a tough time. So what inspired you to, I guess, focus specifically on creatives when it comes to burnout, mental health and sort of therapy?
Yeah, and it really has evolved, honestly. I mean, at the time, that's what I was focused on because, again, like with the audience, especially of like a general assembly or WeWork, it is a lot of entrepreneurs and creatives, and so I was kind of catering to their audience more. And then just with my natural connections, like Ad Club, Creative Mornings, AIGA, those were all creative groups already that I had a good network with. So it naturally progressed from there, just kind of, reinvigorating relationships I already had. And it's also, again, like the most comfortable space I was in. I had no, or at least I should never say never, but like no intention of going back to school for something like this. If
Mhm.
anything, I'm just trying to project my education in ways that I already can, which is mental health first aid. I'm now certified as an instructor for that, so I can actually certify other people, and I got that the beginning of the year, which is really exciting. But yeah, just like surrounding myself with more people in the space as a whole, and that kind of naturally folds into the tech space too because of digital. Creative is such, as we know, a broad term. And what does it even mean that you're creative or you're not sometimes? Because I think we all are in certain ways. It's really evolved. And I'll give a great example. A good buddy of mine, Gonzo, that I met out here, he's like a world renowned chocolate chef who owns a shop. I met him around that same time and said to him, would you want to do a mental health workshop where we're talking about like chocolate and the kitchen and cooking? And then again, I'll kind of specialize more in the digital space. So I've almost started doing workshops like that so I can hit more people where it's, hey, let's get really niche with it in a way that people, again, it's tangible. I'm not going to just sit here and tell every single person who comes through my door, like, just breathe and like live, laugh, love. That is the last thing I wanna do. So the more professionals and people that don't do what I do, I can surround myself with, I'm like, that's it, that's really the recipe. So, yeah, like with the one with Gonzo, we did a chocolate making portion of it where he's talking about, yeah, like the psychology behind that, and people are actually making chocolate in his kitchen. And then the second half was more like happy hour style fireside chat with me leading it. And then they got to enjoy the chocolate they made. So just naturally folding these type of things into conversation where it is a safe space for people. I think that's also a big part of it too. Like whether you're a creative or not, is like making people feel like they can open up in an environment that feels already really good for them versus a white wall therapist office, so to speak. So
I love that because it does take a lot to, become vulnerable. And when you have, sort of that community already around you where you're like, okay, other people are going through the same things I'm going through, it's probably a lot easier to take in the information, maybe open up, etc. I love that. And, sort of diversifying who you're speaking to, because like you said, creative is such a large swath of people, that people who are in tech or who are visual artists or chocolatiers, they're all experiencing those same types of burnout or, creative blocks or something along those lines. So everything is relatable across the board for sure. But what do you think some of the early signs the creative is heading toward burnout, like, before they realize it? What are some of those things? What might they look like?
yeah, I mean, a lot of it, can people confuse burnout, I think, for just being exhausted or tired, and then they think, I'll take a bubble bath and I'll be cured, and I'll go get froyo and I'll be fine. Like we have a lot of band-aids of temporary solutions, I think, that people don't even understand really what burnout is to begin with. So first part is like kind of understanding that a little bit more, but it really is the longer term signs of like irritability. Maybe you're having a really hard time sleeping, you're getting headaches, migraine, things like that. Things that aren't just like being tired traditionally. And I also think as creatives, we love to be our own worst enemy sometimes, that it's like, oh, well, I'm not working through it. I'm not being like resilient, that a lot of like society labels it as now, that I'm lazy suddenly. And it's like, no, you should probably sleep. You should probably drink water. Like that's just being a human. And so part of it too is like breaking that barrier alone so that you can identify different things. I also always like to refer to the HALT system, which is where you're checking in with yourself. Like, are you hungry? Are you angry? Are you, what's the L? I always forget the L stands for. Hold on, I'm gonna find it really quick. I had it pulled up and so hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Checking in with yourself with those. Most of the time for me, I'm hungry. I'm like, I just need a snack and then I'll be okay. But if you have all four of those things all at once, like I for myself notice burnout really easily now because of my irritability that comes with it. Like loud noises kind of hit a little different. I'm a very like sensory overload type of person when I'm feeling burnt out. But the cool part about learning about it more and being able to pinpoint those things of like taking a second to be like, I stubbed my toe and it really hurts and I'm having a meltdown. it's not about stubbing my toe anymore.
Yeah.
It's something deeper, you know? So if you're just noticing even the things that may not have normally bothered you or hit you in that kind of way now are, that's already a first sign. But I was going back, like the cool part about it is now that I can distinguish the triggers, I'm able to get ahead of it more. I'm able to actually like take a beat to be like, okay, Beck, you're seeming extra impatient right now, or you're being clumsy. Like I think when I'm burnt out, I'm really clumsy, like knocking over a water bottle, or dropping stuff or whatever. And I start to laugh about it, but then I'm also like, all right, you need to check in with yourself. Like you need to like take a beat. And it really does help. And like it's just how it'll have allowed me to kind of take back a bit of control in the situation and not feel as overwhelmed by it, if that makes sense. One stat that I wanted to share, especially when it comes to creatives, when it comes to burnout and everything that we're talking about too, is that in 2024 alone, 7 in 10 professionals across media, marketing, and creative sectors reported expressing burnout just in 2024. And then 74% of creatives report experiencing burnout pretty consistently. Like that's really high. So I think it is like not to stereotype again creatives because we all are it to a certain degree, but there is a sensitivity that comes with it, and empathy that comes with it, and understanding for people and like interacting with people too that's intertwined that like you gotta check in with yourself and make sure you're good because you're not going to be able to pour back into other people's cups, you know?
No, absolutely. I mean, yeah, that hits the nail right on the head for sure. I think that leads me to my next question about like building a sustainable routine, right? Because so you're now able to identify, these triggers or these things in your life where you're like, okay, something's got to give. And, creatives, they're typically, right, juggling multiple gigs, they got side hustles, all these things. How can they kind of build some balance into their life?
Yeah, I think part of it is having some self compassion. That sounds really cheesy. But when I say that, I even mean that, like, when you're practicing discipline, when you're practicing forming habits, part of that is being flexible and generous to yourself. That, like, not every day may look the same. It doesn't mean you're a failure. It doesn't mean you're not dedicated to your craft. It doesn't mean that, like, you suck essentially just because I didn't get to the gym that day and now I'm going to derail. There's that book, Atomic Habits, that is just so good when it talks about how to form habits healthily. And I think that, yeah, people sometimes it's kind of like all or nothing, especially when you give all the shits.
Yeah.
At least maybe I was speaking more for myself, but like I feel like I'm an all or nothing person sometimes with my creativity. And so if I get set back, I'm like, oh no, I am now at ground zero. And that's not the truth. But that comes with self compassion too, of now being able to look at myself like, okay, what does actual number one success look like for me?
Mm.
And what does failure look like to me? Because that's evolved over the years too. Part of success is like not comparing yourself too much to other people too, and like where they're at. And as we know with the internet, it doesn't show us everything. So it's kind of all just a joke anyway when you really think about it. And it is everyone just figuring it out in real time. I think for myself too, just this quote unquote simple habits I've started to form is like, oh, I should probably eat food. I should probably, actually make myself some healthy meals, like meal prepping, as consistently as I can so that I'm not just having a scoop of peanut butter and my iced coffee. Because yeah, like when you're multitasking to your point and bopping around or going meeting to meeting, part of that is like being able to almost treat yourself like a client. Like you are time blocking for yourself into your calendar. Like I'll put in a lunch hour, even if I don't take it during that hour. When I see that, I'm like, that's you, that's your time. That is time to do you, whether that's, sometimes taking care of my mental health is doing the laundry that's been sitting in the pile, or it's, doing the dishes, it's going for an extra long walk that day. So I think part of that compassion also ties into knowing that it may look different, number one, for everyone, and it may look different day over day. I think that especially during the pandemic, we saw this shift of conversation of everyone started making banana bread. And like, if you weren't making, or like bread in general, if you weren't making bread, I didn't make bread. I was like, am I failing at the pandemic right now? Like, I'm not even doing that right.
Yeah.
And then somehow you're supposed to eat the bread and have a six pack. I was just like, this makes no sense to me that we're supposed to be doing all of this still. But that's also the society we built too, right? Is like everything's about being better, doing more all the time. And
Mhm.
so it's like, I know I'm like kind of going on a tangent here with it, but it really is breaking down like separating yourself from all these different things, of all the conversations that everyone else tells you is important, and being able to reel it back to like, what the hell matters to me? If my place is clean, I know my creativity is going to be better because I feel better in my space. I work from home. So, like, that is a priority for me over maybe going to the gym that day or whatever Deborah down the street's doing, you know? But yeah, like, again, starting small, taking it hour by hour, I think is like really kind of key, and tuning in with yourself too, and like allowing yourself to be adaptable. Um, One saying from the business aspect that initiated in like 2019, like right as the pandemic was kind of kicking off, is in my email signature, I have a mental health warning, which is talking about how I batch my emails.
Mhm.
So to set boundaries with clients, but also to get myself in a schedule, I check my emails at 7 a.m., noon, and 5. AKA, if you're trying to contact me, because as we know, we could check emails, text messages, DMs all day. So if you're trying to reach me, that's when you're going to hear from me, is in those time frames, versus I'm available all the time. I'm a 24-hour IHOP, that you can come in any single time. That made a huge difference, not only for my working relationships, but for myself as an individual business owner and entrepreneur. I took, again, like I set healthy boundaries. I looked at it as well as kind of a filter for clients that, like, if they didn't like that, I probably don't want to work with you. Obviously, that's easier than said than done, of just like saying no to a contract. I know that's, a hard thing to do, but more so of like, again, setting the expectation. I think creatives don't stand up for themselves enough sometimes out of the gate as a business owner. They don't view themselves that way. So setting that boundary for them of being like, hey, this is when you can expect to hear from me. It's just like helped my business so much. So like that's one thing, I'm like, everyone I think should do that to the best of their ability. Obviously it's dependent on a lot of things, but if you can set boundaries in ways like that, I think you should. And in that as well, I plug my mental health guide that I have, that's a free download on my website, and say like, have you taken a breath today? And clients have loved that. They're like, no, actually I haven't.
Yeah.
and and so it's created conversation around it. And if anything, I've gained clients because they respect that. It's a value to them. And they've also viewed it as like, they've asked me to like do workshops with their offices sometimes, where they're like, oh, what is this? Like, can you come teach this too? So it really has done nothing but good things for my business. I can't say, I can't think of a single client that was like, what is this? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
And again, it's like a standard of working with me too, that I've like set in place now.
I love that. And I think that's so important, as entrepreneurs, independent business owners, we lose sight of ourselves, right? Because it is that sometimes that hustle where I can't turn away that client, or, something along those lines. So, when it comes to setting expectations for ourselves, it's not always great. So I love thinking of it in a mindset of like, treat yourself like you are treating your own clients, right? Like, and I know I personally like live or die by my Google Calendar. So if it's not on there, then yeah, then we're all lost. So no, I totally see that as such a benefit, and hats off to you for doing that into your practice, because that takes a lot. And I think also, you mentioned they respect you a lot more, and like, how are they to know the difference anyways, right? So, if you start doing something where you let them walk all over you, they're going to continue to walk all over you. But if you set the precedent from the beginning of like, hey, my time is precious too, I think they really take on to it.
Yeah. And that's raising the bar just as creatives, right? It's like, I've always said that to creatives and friends in general. It's like, we don't get the quote unquote luxury of the negotiation process. Like, you don't go into a doctor and say, I don't want to pay 5K for that surgery. Can you do it for 500? That just doesn't happen, but it happens in the creative fields all the time. And so you setting the bar of like setting yourself up as a business first, like led, it doesn't always have to be that way in conversation, but I do think it adds that level of respect that we desperately need.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I have kind of been thinking, you mentioned, you are looking to expand, and have been expanding like the types of people you work with, because mental health is a very broad topic. But are there any maybe unique mental health challenges you've seen among creatives since you've been doing this?
Yeah, it's a great question. I feel like a lot of it is related to that imposter syndrome that we kind of touched upon.
Yes.
And actually, perfect segue off of what I just talked about is like, you have to respect yourself first. Again, that sounds cheesy as hell, but if you aren't coming in with even like a little bit of that fake it till you make it, like confidence that comes with it. Cause again, it's like when I got started, I was like immediately like shuddering in the corner of like, I'm not a therapist. I can't speak on this.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's that like performance, not perfection mentality too, of like just putting it out there, doing it. I've recently re-engaged with doing my IG reels of mental health things. I had taken a break from that for like 2 years, just because of life and work and how things have led. And I was really nervous getting back in front of the camera. I was like, "Oh my god, I'm rusty and they're going to smell it and they're going to like throw tomatoes at my screen." And it's like, "No, we have to remember too that like everyone focused on themselves and they aren't really looking at you in the same lens that you do." And I do feel like creatives tend to be their own worst critic way more. Um because it's not as, black and white compared to some other lines of work. It's not as necessarily the ladder that we see with some of these other industries. And that's a beautiful thing. It's also crippling, I think, sometimes. I've gone through it myself. I just had a conversation with an interior design friend yesterday of like, hey, our creative field can go in so many different directions now. Like when I was in school, it felt like, okay, they told you you become a graphic designer, you go work in New York City and die. Like you just like,
Right.
that's it. Like you work at an agency and that's your path and good luck. And now, because of how much the digital space has evolved, it is really cool in a way of how many ways we can go with it, but it is very overwhelming too. So I think part of that ties into the imposter syndrome a little bit of like, well, I don't know everything about that, so maybe I shouldn't touch it. I mean, I'm not telling you to like pretend to be a doctor. It's not like that.
Right, right.
But, everything within reason here. But it is like, something to remind yourself that like, just because you don't fully know how out of the gate, it's okay to like try it too.
Yeah.
And again, like surrounding yourself with the people who maybe don't know what or don't do what you do and are professionals in it, or can bring some insight there as well. I think that creatives, the benefit we have off of this though too is that because your work can kind of go in a lot of different paths and infiltrate a lot of different fields. Like think of it like DJing now. All the different genres are getting remixed, which that
Right.
wasn't always the case. And so
Right.
now it's like, wait, that's expanding. If you're just thinking about this all in expansion, it's actually really cool. And guarantee it's like, well, a country artist may not know anything about DJing at first, but then they're learning it and vice versa. So anyway, I don't even know if I answered your question at that point. I'm going on my tangent.
You did. No, no, you totally did. And I think that, imposter syndrome can take so many, different forms, right?
Yeah.
In everything. And, I think just being able to celebrate achievements along the way and seeking support, like from people like you or workshops that you do or things along that nature, that's super important, right? Community, letting people know that
Mhm.
they're not alone in this particular instance, and just like you've done is sharing your experiences, I think is super important. And I myself, I am CEO, but when I say that, it's laughable. But that's just something I'm learning to accept, and that like I belong here in this seat and that I am allowed to take up space. And I think that as creatives, we get so in our own head. And so I think
Almost like performance anxiety that like ties into it too. Like whether you're an
truly,
actual performing artist or like
yes.
we'll say like you're performing as a CEO, that's an art too. That makes me think as well. You talked about like celebrating those wins, which is so important. And I try to do that more and more. One thing I started was I have a folder called Winner Winner that when I get those good emails from a client, I save them in there. So that like, because at least in my line of work with marketing, it can be really thankless because it's 24 hours
Absolutely.
and people don't always get it, right? Like they don't get the value in the way that I do or other creatives do. And so they start treating me like a McDonald's flipping burgers versus like the part of my brain that you're actually paying for. And then that again messes with the psyche of everything else we're talking about. So when I get those little wins, I save them in that folder. And then I usually do an end of year review for myself. And that sounds very buttoned up, but it's more of like I go through like everything I can think of from the year and write out more of the success from it or like what I learned versus like, oh, I could have done this better. Yeah, no shit. We can all do things better all the time. Like that's called growth. But starting to even look at my quote unquote failures as like A B testing a little bit of like, what did I actually learn from that? And how did that now looking back connect all those dots? Because
Yeah.
it's that phrase of like you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them when you look backwards. So, ooh, wisdom. But
Dropping the gems.
and it's now and that was a practice actually. The end of year review is something I learned from a good buddy out here, Adam. He passed on this homework to me, and now I do it every year. And it's like really helped me just reflect and take the time to like celebrate those successes.
Oh, I love that. It's so important. We don't do that often enough. Success looks different for everybody and everything. And I think, social media is the best, worst thing. People think there needs to be these like huge, like, oh, I get signed by a label or whatever that like pie in the sky thing is. But there are things that are much smaller that happen on a daily basis that chipping away, sure to get you to that point. So what you didn't just get signed by a label, like think of all the little things that got you to that point and remember to relish them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, I mean, I think that is sort of every creative's being able to separate their identity right from their output because everything is so tied together. How do you help others or help yourself? How do you kind of like untwist those things because they can blend so easily?
Yeah. Honestly, it's something I feel like I still constantly am learning because as a creative, again, it just naturally ties me to my life, which is a blessing and a curse. It's like how they joke with designers. It's like, well, we can't look at any menu without tearing it apart or a poster because we're looking at the fonts and the kerning and all this stuff. So it is like a blessing and curse. But for me, a big part of it has been try to be more strict with a 9 to 5. Again, that's like part of routine. That's the time blocking. That's all the more structured business things that we talk about. But then when I am off, a big part of it too is like, my job is very demanding socially and digitally. And so I try to find things where I'm not on my phone. That includes the people I'm surrounding myself with. I play a ton of volleyball now. And so I know I'm not going to be looking at my phone while I'm doing that, which is really nice. And I'm moving my body. Like it is choosing your own adventure, finding what works for you too in the process so that you aren't, to your point, like looking at the success of somebody else. Like I say this respectfully, the bullshit of like, oh, I wake up at 4 a.m. and go to the gym and then I go again later and I drink my greens. Like, that's not the reality for a majority of people. Again, remember, we're in a consumerism society. There's actually this really great quote that I constantly think of from Princess Bride, the movie, where he said, life is pain. Anyone who tells you otherwise is selling you something. And I'm like, yes, that's it because, people aren't talking about their failures as much. It's getting better on the internet, but what you're getting fed because of the algorithm is sales. And so I think again, like I view life hour by hour, even. I'm not really good at planning the 5 year thing. I don't really do beginning of the year goals necessarily in the sense of like really hard goals. Instead, I kind of reframe it in my head of like, what do I want to be prepared for? So I want my portfolio to be up to date so that if a dream client comes through my door, I am prepared for that and I'm ready. Versus, I need to get 25 clients by this deadline. That's like what works for me, though. That's like what works for my mental health so that I'm not biting off more than I could chew, stressing myself out unnecessarily. Because to your point, too, if you're bumping or like jumping around to different gigs, you're living paycheck to paycheck, it's really hard to ground yourself and remind yourself, like, that it's okay to have those slow moments. I think also we've been trained from the freelance perspective that if you're not busy at every hour of the day, you're not productive. But
Right.
that is not the same thing. Those are not equivalent. If
Yeah.
anything, it's usually the opposite. I feel like my worst mental health is when I was quote unquote the busiest and probably looked the most successful.
Mm.
And I wasn't taking care of myself. My diet was horrible. Like I was living in my car at one point, and like that's the most successful I probably have looked to people. And it's so funny to think about now. I mean, it's not funny, but it's a little haha funny. Um, yeah, exactly. It's that kind of funny. Ha, ha, ha. But no, like when I really look back and think about it, I'm like, that's when I really was in that headspace of like, I must be productive at every hour.
Yeah.
And it's even a practice, and again, like a thing I set in line with my clients again out of the gate from those emails. It's like, no, I can't be productive every hour. And sometimes my productivity comes at 2 in the morning when I'm a night out, and that's when my creativity is first. But then there's other days it's at 6 in the morning when I'm first waking up. So like I think again, that's that allowing yourself to kind of ebb and flow with your feelings too, if you can, and like where it's allowed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love how you have sort of reverse engineered, you're talking about the goals and thinking about it from another perspective of like, what is being pushed out there might not necessarily work for you. Like I personally have found that I'm not a morning person. I don't take, in a perfect world, any meetings before 10 a.m. I just know I'm not at my best. I need a slow morning. I need to come into my day having had my coffee and done my morning things and had time to check the email and just like keep it really calm. And so that's what works best for me. And I've also set certain days a week where I'm going to try to take all of my appointments outside of the house, having worked from home, on Tuesdays. That way, my focus and energy is on that, and I'm not pulled in all these different directions. And then I'm like, okay, which plate is spinning right now? Like, what is that? Where is that? So I really appreciate you kind of like having that, and that comes with time too, right? Like knowing yourself, and knowing, what's going to work for you and just kind of leaning, right into that. You also talked, a bit about obviously time blocking. We've talked about Google Calendar. Are there any maybe apps or exercises or like go-to prompts, things that, you recommend for checking in with yourself or keeping those things in line?
Yeah, I mean, there's a billion apps. I'll share it with you. I have a guide of like some of my favorite ones in terms of, when it comes to more of like the headspace type of like meditation and whatnot. I do have, not sponsored, I have the Hatchlight, which I really like
Mm.
for routine where it wakes me up with like the sunrise and like birds chirping,
Oh.
um, instead of like a jarring like alarm. Um, that has helped me though. I've had that probably since 2020 as well. I also it's like a forced way I do a meditation because I'm not the best at like sticking to a meditation routine. My meditation might look like hiking, for example. And then there's other days it looks like actually sitting down and journaling. With the Hatchlight, you can actually like set a routine for yourself. So like every single night, I listen to the same two meditations before I like go to sleep.
Yeah.
And so that is a way I've almost tricked myself a little bit. I have to trick myself a lot, like with treats, with food, with naps, whatever. But also going back to like that halt system, like being able to do those check-ins with yourself again, just taking that extra beat to be like, why do I feel this way? How like feeling it in your body truly. Like there's times like even in traffic sometimes I'll notice like my fist is like this and I'm like why what the heck, and I like have to like release it. So much of our stress is like held in our body that way, and so it's like they say too about like unclenching your jaw, lowering your shoulders, like those are things you don't need an app for. That's just like a natural check-in with yourself. So I'm more of a proponent, I feel like, of that stuff. But when it comes to tech, it's like again tricking myself, putting my phone in like black and white mode towards the end of the night, like after a certain time, because your phone does not look cool in black and white. You like don't want to be on the apps then. It
Oh.
really is. You're just like, oh my God, like this is actually painful to get through stuff. I know some people who do the red light filter if they are going to be on their phone that you can set so that it's better as it's hitting your eyes. Um, I also think, again, it's very old school, but part of my routine is making sure that I'm getting a walk first thing in the morning. They even say it's like if you can't do a 10 to 30-minute walk every day, or like get out in the sun, or you don't have that, type of environment, whatever it may be, even 5 minutes is beneficial. So again, like starting small there. Um, and then, I mean, in terms of online therapy and stuff too, there's so many different resources in terms of like free things that are available. There are the different ones like Talkspace. I feel like I tried all of them partially for experimentation a little bit and like research, but also just to find what works for me because they've all been very different. So I think like to your point, the internet is a dumpster fire, but it takes a little bit of digging, but you can find the stuff that works for you and that's good for you. It just I think the hardest part is honestly the first step of doing it, like doing therapy, even that may look different for different people. I've taken breaks from therapy for like a few years and found other forms of it. Um, I'm trying to think too in terms of if there's anything that comes to mind. Again, this is where I'm like 80 years old and I'm like, just check in with yourself. But it is like something because I like try and not be on my phone as much as possible. Like when I'm not working, I'm like, I don't even use apps as much anymore for self care when I'm really thinking about it, besides my hatch light, which is kind of crazy.
That's a great tip though, right? Is like, how can you take it offline? I mean, you talk about things like going hiking, getting out and touching grass, right? Like they say. Something that I started doing is, so I work with this nonprofit and they have a weekly meetup where it's just, it says, come draw, write, sketch, whatever it is. And so for me, that's a great way to come and check in, with other creatives that are doing the same thing that just need that like focused time or like to step away from, what they might normally be doing. So, if there's a way, maybe to look to others for, like an accountability buddy, as they say.
That's my dog. Like my dog is my accountability buddy for my walks. Like
Yep.
her routine is my routine in a way. And then if she's cranky with me, I know it because I've messed up her routine. Like it really is like that mirror back at you, whether it's your kids, your dog, your coworkers, like so much of it is like, the people in your life are going to kind of tell you what's up directly or indirectly. I think that is super important is like, again, using the internet for good. There's meetup groups for everything, it seems like now. There's Reddit for like if you're not so much an in-person person with things, like you could still find your communities in a digital space that feels safe for you. Doesn't mean you have to be an extrovert to like have community. I think like that sometimes gets a little mixed up too. Because people think I'm very extroverted. I think I'm an ambivert where like I'll be really social, where like my mental health self-care is like, sure, I'm gonna go like shake my ass at the club. But then the next day I'm gonna go in isolation mode. Like it looks different all the time, like week over week. And I think again, it kind of comes into that check-in with it that if you notice, hey, I'm feeling anxious when I'm scrolling online, which most of us are, maybe there's ways I can again trick myself into like not using it as much. Or if I replace like because I deleted TikTok because I was on it too much. And then I was like, okay, if I'm going to feed this addiction to my screen, I started Duolingo, for example. So it's like replacing things too incrementally. I think, like, again, just like any diet or anything else you're implementing in your life, it's like, how can you do it in a way that is sustainable and more evergreen and that's actually going to work into your life versus the other way around? I think, like, that's again ties back into the goal setting too, a little bit of like, if I'm looking at this, again, this is just my headspace of I'm looking at my portfolio. When I first did my website, I was like, this took me forever. And it's the hardest thing in the world for me to still do. But if instead I'm like, okay, I'm going to focus on this section or this page, like just like biting off little things with it. It feels like anyway, for me, at least that's way more obtainable. And then it actually sticks.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, all of this has me thinking about maybe somebody who doesn't want to slow down. This also has me thinking about maybe clients that you've worked with that might not have respected those boundaries you've set up for yourself?
How much time do you have?
Right. There's always a few, but I'm just curious how you might navigate that without slipping back into old habits.
It really is a practice. It's like I'll find myself wanting to respond to that email right away, whether it's because I'm there with it, but then it truly is this psychological thing of, what I used to define as success, where our client would be like, "Oh, you're so fast. Like you did this so quick," or like, "Thanks for the quick response." While sometimes that can be good, it also does lead down that slippery slope of like becoming accessible all the time. So I love scheduling emails. That is one thing that, like, even if I am ready to do it, I might even bump it an hour, or like, because at least for my line of work, I always say it's PR, not the ER. I'm not saving lives. Obviously, again, it's dependent on different things. Like if it's something that has to go to print and like it needs to go to print, I can respect that. And like I'm not gonna be like, no, I'm not gonna respond for an hour. It's not like that. But most of my work, luckily, isn't, that dire. And so I do have that flexibility to be like, hey, actually, I could take a beat with this. Or again, if I'm working late at night, I don't want them seeing that I'm on at 2 in the morning. I remember joking about this before. I'm like, I'm not your booty call, like from the creative stance either. So if I'm responding to you at 2 a.m., this is also, again, it ties into the respect thing. But instead, I'll schedule it for maybe 6:30 in the morning. So then they think I'm a productive little early morning bird.
Early riser.
Maybe I'm revealing too much. Um, but but no, most of the time it's like, again, even if I'm up and everything, it's like still I'm similar to you. I love my slow mornings. I love being able to take that time and space for myself. And so I know when my productive time is and I know when it's not. But yes, scheduling emails has always been like a good friend to me, I'd say, to help keep those boundaries. And also, I'm trying to think what else. I mean, the go, go, go aspect of things is really hard because I used to be that way way more, where I just never slowed down. I felt like any time that I wasn't being productive in my company, that I was failing or I wasn't doing enough. Like everyone always makes you feel like you're not doing enough. My therapist, however, years ago brought up this term for me called fallowing, which is a farming term actually. And it is the term associated with when you are working on the soil and it's the time right after you like really worked on it. You've done the fertilization and now it needs to rest so that it actually has time to absorb the nutrients. It has time to actually like produce the things it needs to for a proper crop to grow. And I'm like, damn, that's good. Because I've also heard the messaging before throughout my life of like, if you rest, you rust. And I do believe in that to an extent, but part of the rest adds to your life too, and we forget that. Again, it sounds cheesy as hell. And most of the mental health stuff does most of the time, but there's a reason that people keep saying it. And so when it comes to that, I like when my therapist hit me with that when I was like, oof. And I believe in nature, that's for damn sure. I think we can all learn something from Mother Nature. And so when they were talking about it in that aspect, I was like, that's a really good message though. Also in mental health first aid, we talk a ton about putting your face mask on the plane during an emergency before your child. It's like there's a reason they always say that, because if you ain't taking care of yourself, you can't take care of other people. Because at first I remember, hearing that before mental health first aid, and I was like, I get it. And now after going through that certification, it has changed my outlook on so many things in life, truly, of like the day to day and the looking out for number one in a really healthy way that I don't think enough people talk about.
Yeah, no, that's so true. Can't take care of yourself. You're not going to be able to be a resource for others. That just has me thinking about when you paint your nails and you never wait long enough for them to dry. And you try to do something right away and then you're like, so if you can have the patience to something great will come out on the other end.
Yeah, I'm like, notice how mine aren't painted right now for that exact reason. I just took them off because like I paint my nails maybe once every few months, if I'm lucky, because of that exact thing. So again, it's something like it really is a practice. I don't know if anyone's ever perfected it fully, at least like for me not living in a major city. I don't know if I've perfected it fully or will, but because it is like there's a lot of noisiness in the world that kind of comes in, and that's not even talking about the actual world and digital space. So
yeah, No, that's so true. So if you had one piece of advice, just one,
Oh no. I'm not sure. Have you not learned? I'm not sure.
I know.
right. For just advice to creatives who feel like, they're barely holding it together right now, what might that be?
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely not alone. I think what I keep coming back to, especially because of the current political climate and like how it is infiltrating our social media and digital space, I am reminding myself and others that like this isn't normal for us to be taking it in the way we are. People feel like they're crumbling. And again, this was during the pandemic too, where we are in front of our screens more and we're getting blasted with news way more, but really we're cavemen. So the systems that are built, we're not emotionally, intellectually like able to catch up with in the way that the systems are. And so I think we forget that. And I think we think we need to donate to everything. We need to like save the world. And that kind of falls back on our what we talk a lot about is community of like sometimes saving the world looks like taking care of yourself or taking care of just one neighbor or your kid or whatever. Community in itself is such a broad word to use too. And sometimes that's through your creativity and using it in a way that's going to like fuel you too and other people. Well, that's just chef's kiss. But yeah, I think like right now, especially reminding people that like you don't have to carry everything that's going on because you're kind of not meant to, and starting small there. Whether that's like just focusing on one thing that's going to fill your cup, or again taking life. I'm always saying I'm taking life hour by hour. I can't do more than that. At least right now, I can't.
That's fair. No, that's absolutely fair. And I think, the fact that that, speaks volumes. So where might people want to connect with you if, they want to work with you or they want to dive deeper into finding more out about mental health and exercises they can do?
Yeah. So on my website, I do have a free download that's like a whole mental health guide. It has a lot of resources, exercises, things like that. So I can provide that link. I'd say I'm the most active on Instagram. It's so funny. It's like as I'm talking about all this, like follow me on Instagram. But no, like that's where again I'm trying to fuel the dumpster fire with some good stuff. So and I'm always open in my DMs if people have questions. Also happy to direct people for mental health first aid if they're interested. I can certify you in it or a group of people in it. So if you have like a company that wants to do it, I can absolutely help you with that. If you don't want to be an instructor, you can just do regular mental health first aid, which I truly recommend everybody do. It's a 1 day course, not even, and it's way more affordable, but I can answer any questions that come along with that too. So yeah, I'd say like Instagram's probably the best, or then my website is remickz.com, remix.com. And that will just take you through the web of all the other resources if you want to look at them. So just
I
keep
love
going.
Absolutely. So I would ask what's next for you, but since we don't future plan, what are you trying to plan for? I guess like what is
Dinner?
your hour by hour? There you go. You're trying to feed yourself. So you've made
Trying to fuel myself. Um, well, no, for me, it really is like I'm always looking for, again, like to get into spaces that mental health isn't talked about a lot. So, like, there really is nothing off limits to me. It really is about making more partnerships. I will say there is a partnership I'm working on right now that could launch in the fall that would be really cool because it's with a global organization, and that would be combining music with the mental health space a little bit more, which is just so great. That's my jam. And so stay tuned more on that. I have a lot being located in Denver. A lot more of the workshops are in person here that I'm trying to work towards. However, I'm still doing digital ones too. So really it's almost just like getting back into the swing of it and like again meeting the right partners because it's crazy how much has changed in the creative community here in Denver over the last few years, let alone like some of the other cities I've lived in or have connections with. Like people's jobs have changed. Also, other creatives that like started in UX and now they're doing branding or now they're doing influencer. Now, like it's really cool though, but like we're all kind of evolving. So it's kind of like right now, I think I'm just putting some puzzle pieces together with it. But yeah, so to be determined, but there's a lot of good stuff in the works. I think I'm just trying to again make it as obtainable, accessible, and free as possible. So
Well, we love that and we love you. And thank you so much for joining us today and just sharing your wealth of knowledge and, making it relatable for people who, might feel that therapy or things along those lines are, just too much for them to, perhaps deal with. So I appreciate you and definitely we'll be on the lookout for hopefully this partnership to come to fruition. And for y'all watching, please make sure you like, subscribe, share, and remember to check out Remix Marketing.
Yeah. Thank you, Megan.